You said you were just gonna check one thing. Adorable. That tiny lie has destroyed more evenings than bad weather, weak Wi-Fi, and just one episode combined. You get home, sit down, unlock your phone, and suddenly it is 11:47 p.m. and your soul has the texture of cold leftover fries. But here's the annoying part. This is not always laziness. A lot of the time, it is predictability. After work, your brain is not looking for a heroic personal growth montage. It is looking for something that does not ask questions. No guessing, no planning, no new decision tree. Just the same glowing rectangle, the same apps, the same little dopamine vending machine whispering, "Come here, I know exactly how tired you are." That is why evening drift feels so sticky. Your brain is allocating resources. And after a day of meetings, messages, errands, facial expressions, fake enthusiasm, and pretending one more email won't make you spiritually evaporate, your cognitive load budget is gone. So the evening does not need more motivation. It needs fewer open doors. That is cognitive resource allocation in sweatpants. The first control point is phone access. Not because the phone is evil. Relax. Nobody is performing an exorcism on your iPhone. The problem is that your phone is the most familiar room in the house. Every swipe has a known rhythm, every feed has a predictable emotional flavor. Tiny outrage, tiny laugh, tiny curiosity, tiny regret, repeat. The mere exposure effect basically says the more often you encounter something, the more your brain starts treating it like home. Even if that home is a couch-shaped swamp where your bedtime goes to die. So when the evening has no structure, the familiar option wins. Not the best option, the most repeated one. That is why moving the phone across the room, charging it outside the bedroom or putting it behind one boring little barrier changes the whole temperature of the night. Not dramatically, just enough. Because now the old loop has friction. And friction is where regulation starts acting like an adult in the room. Then comes task scope. Because what do tired people do when they finally get a free evening? They create a fantasy itinerary like a deranged productivity goblin. Clean the kitchen, answer messages, work out, read, meal prep, fix life. Become emotionally available, maybe start a side business. Sure, totally normal. But the nervous system hears that list and immediately chooses scrolling, because scrolling has one job and asks for nothing. Novel tasks require bandwidth. They require threat assessment. Where do I start? How long will it take? What if I don't finish?
What if this reveals that my whole life is held together with iced coffee and denial?
Established routines feel safer because the outcome is already known. That is cognitive load theory with a hoodie on. So the second control point is making the evening task insultingly small. Not organize the apartment, just clear one surface. Not finish the project, just open the file and name the next step. Not have a perfect restorative night. Just decide what rest actually counts as before the screen starts negotiating like a tiny casino lawyer. Because certainty lowers the price of action. The unknown burns energy. The confirmed path saves it. And once the brain sees a task with edges, it stops treating the evening like a foggy parking lot full of invisible obligations. There is another part nobody wants to admit. Your evening does not start when you sit down. It starts when the workday fails to end. That is the sneaky little parasite. You close the laptop, but your brain is still wearing its office badge. You answer one message, check one notification, mentally rehearse tomorrow. Replay one weird conversation where someone said interesting with the emotional warmth of a parking ticket. So the body is home, but the identity is still at work. This is why a shutdown signal matters. Not because lighting a candle turns you into a wellness influencer with linen pants and suspiciously clean countertops, but because the brain needs a visible line. Same chair, same phrase, same walk, same 5-minute reset. The signal stays simple, the person using it changes. Some nights you are calm. Some nights you are held together by snacks and spite. But the routine becomes a fixed point. And that fixed point lets you notice the difference between who you were at 6 p.m. and who you are becoming by 8 p.m. That is self-concept evolution, but with house keys. Now, screen substitution is where people get weirdly dramatic. They hear less scrolling and act like someone is confiscating joy from the kingdom. Nobody said you have to stare at a wall and become spiritually aerodynamic. The issue is not screens, the issue is bottomless screens. A chosen movie is different from an algorithmic trapdoor. A comfort episode is different from 90 minutes of strangers arguing under a recipe video. A playlist is different from opening 7 apps and letting your attention get passed around like cheap party snacks. Some media can be an emotional waypoint. The old song you always play while cooking, the familiar show that makes the room feel less sharp. The podcast voice that feels like company without requiring pants, replies, or facial muscles. That is not failure, that is attachment doing its weird little job. The brain uses familiar artifacts to access older, safer versions of itself. It remembers, it reconnects. It says, oh right, I exist outside productivity. So the move is not no screen, it is chosen screen. Finite screen, a screen with a door. Not a hallway that keeps generating more hallway. Then comes the reward problem. Because tired people love creating rules that sound noble and collapse in 9 minutes. No phone until everything is done. No show until the kitchen is spotless.
No rest until I become a completely different person with better posture and meal containers.
Please. That plan is not discipline. That is a hostage negotiation with your own fatigue. The evening brain has limited executive function. Every tiny decision takes a bite. At some point, the brain simply picks the easiest constant, the feed, the couch, the loop. So reward scheduling works because it removes the courtroom. One task, one reward, same order, same rule. Do the tiny defined thing, then take the defined rest. No moral drama, no identity trial. The next control point is rest definition, because a shocking number of people do not actually rest. They collapse. Rest has shape. Collapse has crumbs on your shirt and 3 hours missing from the record. Rest says, I am choosing this. Collapse says, the evening kidnapped me and honestly, I helped. A walk counts, a shower counts, a show counts if it has an endpoint. Predictability calms the system. Regulation loves a clear container. And then we get to the rule problem. People ruin routines by making them sound like prison contracts. 20-step night routine, 3 journals, perfect sleep hygiene, blue light rules. No wonder the brain runs away. A good evening rule is almost embarrassingly simple. Consistency is not built from dramatic personality upgrades. It is built from boring environmental facts repeated until the brain stops arguing. And the final piece is accepting incomplete output. Some evenings you will clear 1 plate, send 1 message, open 1 document. And that still counts. Not because standards are dead, because identity needs evidence, not perfection. Small proof still strengthens the pattern. That is adaptive coping. That is ego integration. So no, losing your evenings does not mean you are broken. It means your night has no walls. The easiest thing will always win unless the better thing is made stupidly, beautifully obvious. Comment the evening trap that gets you the most. Phone, tasks, screens, or fake rest. Subscribe if you want more behavioral psychology.